Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the podcast. I'm David Allen. We're back. And today we got an exciting guest because this is something I don't think many people like to really think about, but is one of the most important things that you will encounter probably going forward in your life, especially if you're in business. And if you're a copywriter, like a lot of our listeners are, this is something that involves a little bit of planning, perhaps, which most people may not want to think about, but we have an excellent retirement planner on the show today. He's got kind of a very interesting story, and he's got a very interesting offer that I think you'll appreciate once you hear him. Jeff Kronenberg, welcome to the show.
David, thank you. It's great to be here. Thank
you. It's nice to have you on the show, man. Yeah, I think this is one of these things that people are sort of like, talk about in whispers maybe, or don't like to think about, but is super important. And you're an expert in this field, and you've been doing this for, I think you said the better part of like 14 years or something like this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this will be interesting. I want you to sort of start, though, by taking us back like we like to do on this show. We like to go back to see sort of how you progressed into where you're at today. So take us back into the early life of Jeff and sort of what led you to this.
Yeah, thanks. So, when I got out of college, actually, what I wanted to do was be a pharmaceutical sales rep. And that was kind of the hot job at the time. So when I got out of college, I had done this internship at a pharmaceutical company, and they wouldn't hire me. And I'm like, what are you kidding me? I've interned for you for 2 summers and, for free. And then I came to realize that, well, I was not a pretty girl, and therefore they weren't going to offer me a job because that was the description of what they were looking for in that industry at the time. So here I was getting out of college, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this, and it's a great job and a great career and all that. And, I was like disqualified right away, but that's okay. I kind of just fell into the industry that I'm in. I met a guy that knew a guy and knew another guy. And I started my journey in the financial services industry in New York City, downtown off Wall Street. And
nice.
Yeah, thinking back to one of the first training classes that I had, and I remember, the line of expertise that I have is very out of the box stuff. We're helping people essentially get their assets tax exempt. So although retirement planning is kind of a boring subject, when you say to someone, they say, what do you do? And you say, well, I'll show you how to get your wealth tax exempt. Their ears perk up because let's face it. Nobody,
Definitely.
Yeah. No one wants to have to pay more in taxes than they're required to. You got to pay the income tax once, but after that, it's really your choice as to what you want to do with your money. I really just got lucky in terms of meeting the right people, I think, very, very early on that were kind of headed in, that were headed and heading in the right direction in terms of, the knowledge they had and the information and the strategies that they shared with clients. So I've been doing this work from the get-go. Obviously, it's progressed over time. I'm still learning to this day. So that's kind of how it was just by chance. So
that's fascinating. I mean, it's like you said, I think it's kind of an unsexy topic to talk about retirement and protecting your assets and stuff like that, but it's really one of the most important things. I mean, it doesn't take much of a Google search to find out plenty of horror stories and stuff of people who have not thought ahead to their retirement or to, other people passing away in their family and coming into assets and so forth that aren't necessarily yours to begin with, but that you've been left from other people and so forth.
Totally. I think that, for the most part, if you picture a mountain as an example, all we really learn about, all we hear about is how to get up the mountain. How do we invest our money? How do we get rates of return that are really good and this and that? And we hear, oh, you have to take a lot of risk on in order to grow your wealth. But the reality is that if you understand how money really works, what's more important than acquiring a large treasure chest of assets, at the end of the day, if we're saving for one day when we're not going to work anymore, we need to know how to get off the financial mountain, so to speak. In other words, we're never learning or hearing about how to spend our money at retirement, and so I use the mountain analogy because I forget the statistic, but I heard about 70% of the deaths that occur on Mount Everest occur on the descent, right?
That's a great one. Yeah, you're right.
So if I was a Sherpa, knowing that you've got a much greater probability of dying, you'd probably hire me as the Sherpa to get you down the mountain than the one that gets you up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'm helping people with is not just the accumulation of their assets in a much safer fashion without risks and without taxes, but we're also taking that to the next level and saying, hey, we need to also show you how to spend your money at retirement. And if it's done the right way and you can have your assets tax exempt, that therefore then means that your cash flow coming off the mountain is also tax exempt. So when you study it, you're going to have a heck of a lot more cash flow than if you don't do it this way. And people love hearing that and they love seeing it. It's a game changer. It's really a game changer and a life changer. It's freedom.
That's totally true. I would totally believe what you're saying. I mean, a lot of people, of course, in the latter stages of their lives that may be listening to this, and they're also worried about, what they're going to leave behind, or what they're worried about their family or their family members and so forth. And so with the services and program that you provide, it's going to ease those worries. So those latter years are stress-free, which is super important as you get older.
Yeah, I mean, I have this kind of, I guess you would maybe call it a spiritual view on money or whatever word you want to use. But you know what? At the end of the day, money is a fake thing. Brilliant human beings, we were able to create this system of currency in this world here. And it's really, really interesting when you look at it from that standpoint. Like money runs our life, some of us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of silly when you take a step back because it's like, where did this all even come from? And so my view is like, it's super easy for me to help people get what they want with their money and get what they want at retirement. But what really jazzes me is seeing the smiles on their faces when that fear about how they're going to do it dissipates, when they're pumping their fists because they realize, wow, I just reached freedom. I just reached that pinnacle of financial freedom. That gets me going because what we're doing is we're saving people's lives and they're able to live a happier, healthier, less stressed out life and then reclaim control of not just their money, but the way that they're going to live and enjoy those latter part of the years without having to worry and without having to have this sense of confusion and without having to know that, there's a risk right around the corner, whether it's the tax rates going up and changing or the stock market taking 50% of their money. When you don't have those concerns, you can now live life on your terms. And that's, man, it's a beautiful thing to see. It's a beautiful thing to know that you're impacting, your fellow brothers and sisters in such a way. We're all connected at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's so nice to see because especially people of like I'm in my 40s now. My parents, my father is in his 70s. And you sort of, a lot of those, at that day and age, a lot of people were like living that sort of like deferred life plan where you're going to work a certain amount and then you're going to save up, like you're saying, and you're acquire all these treasure chest of assets. And then you're going to stop working one day and you're going to try to enjoy this stuff. And people like to, travel or do whatever they want to do. And it's a lot of people have found out that that's not the case, the way the world has gone and the economy has shifted here and there. And maybe they've been burned a couple times and now their nest egg or whatever is not as large as they'd hope it would be. And maybe some of those dreams are no longer attainable with something like you offer. I mean, it makes that process so much more reassuring and worry-free.
Totally. And I can give you a really simple example as to kind of the issue that I think people are facing, but then an alternative, because at the end of the day, what you described there is person A, let's say, and person A retires and they have, let's just say, $3 million. And that $3 million gives them, let's just call it $130,000 a year taxable for life. Or, and that may work out for them or it may not. Most of the time it's not working out. You have $3 million, you've got to get a return on that money, but also make sure that you don't run out of money. And so there's this thing called a withdrawal rate. I don't want to get too hyper technical here, but the withdrawal rate of your money so that you have a 60% chance of not running out of money is around 3%. Why on earth would you ever go for a plan and go and strategically move yourself towards a situation where you have a 60% chance of not running out of money? Because to me, that means 40% of the time you will. It makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why people can't retire, is they're literally just setting themselves up wrong. But we don't know alternatives, because person A with 3 million and $130 of income, as an example, may or may not be attainable. Let's just say it is. I could make somebody, or I could show them how they can make themselves be person B. But person B has $1.5 million and $100,000 of cash flow tax exempt. So who would you rather be at the end of the day, knowing at the end when you're retired, it's all about maintaining your lifestyle. It's all about cash flow.
Yeah,
so,
person B, easy choice.
Yeah, easy choice. So therefore, with that said, that means that the folks out there who have acquired a treasure chest of assets, but maybe it didn't go as they had planned, if they could just become person B and get those assets to spend as if they've got 2 times as much, they're going to be okay. And that's what I help people do.
That's powerful, super powerful. And of course, we probably all have people in our lives that have experienced some of those horror stories. And we probably, even listening to this, when this comes out, people will be thinking, oh, if only I'd known this sooner, or if my Uncle Nick had known about this, or whatever, and it's one of those things that nobody likes to talk about, because it is kind of scary, I think, too. There's like a, trepidation that comes along with thinking about being older, especially if you're younger, and often if you're quite young, then you're not thinking about it at all, because you feel like you're impervious. You're focusing on your career and your family, perhaps. And it just doesn't seem like something that's super important, because you figure you got the whole life to figure it out. But the sooner you get started, the better.
Yeah, it's certainly easy to procrastinate on it, and it's not as fun as going to a basketball game or a football game or skiing or sitting at the beach, that's for sure. But when people I've found get started on it, younger, in let's say their 40s or something like that, instead of their 50s or 60s, it just allows them to relax more and then go enjoy the things that they like to do. And then subconsciously in the back of their head, they don't have this worry like, shoot, am I actually going to be able to not have to go to this job I don't like, or run this business that I don't really want to run anymore? Or am I going to have to do this forever? And so what I've found through experience is that when people get started younger and they know they're headed in the direction that's going to work 100% of the time versus 60% of the time, just better quality of life overall. This subconscious worry is now gone.
Yeah, and then the trepidation and the fear, perhaps, of because I think that's one of the things too, which I think we've experienced, people who are over 42, is you're also thinking, you almost don't want to know what you're up against, so you put it off, because you're just if I actually check the numbers or do it, it's going to be a rude awakening.
Oh yeah, totally. And when they start digging under the hood, it's actually worse. I'll give you an example. Most people have their money in these retirement plans, right?
Right.
Thing is, though, is that when we do these, we do them because we want to not pay taxes on our money today. So we're deferring paying the tax.
Right.
But we're also deferring the tax calculation.
Right.
So we don't really know what tax rate we will be in the future. But here's the question. Do you think that it'll cost more or less to run the government in 10, 20, and 30 years?
That's a pretty easy one, I'd say.
So we know it'll cost more. Therefore, how does the government make money to function? They raise taxes. So you could be putting money into one of these vehicles and then just setting yourself up to pay more on your money in the future, in which case you're doing reverse tax planning. So, no one would ever want to do it. The good news is that if you get at it soon enough and you realize this soon enough and you address it soon enough, you can reverse it. That's the good news.
That is good news. And for anybody listening to this, I mean, to sort of encounter that is like, yeah, that's a mistake a lot of people have made, is like to defer all that stuff to later. And I have family members going through that right now, where they're like trying to get that taxation stuff out of the way now when they're in their early 40s. Because of that, you're unsure what kind of rate. And
yeah, it's funny though, if you study taxes, if you look at where they've been at between, let's just go back to mid 1920s or so and go all the way until Ronald Reagan became president. Taxes were between 70 and 94%.
Right.
As the highest bracket. I mean, that's, those are big numbers.
It's huge.
Well, really, even before 1920, they got up to 73%. So, and they stayed between 73 and 70 all the way up until around 1980. So then they came down, but we've got wars like the Gulf War to still pay for. We have all this stuff. We have to pay for it at some point. The reason taxes were so high is that during that period of time from, let's say 1918 or 1920, whatever, however you want to look at it, up until the Carter administration and then Reagan, we used to fight a war and then actually pay for it. We would bail out companies and pay for it, we would pay for the things that we did for the citizens. So we haven't been doing that for a very long time, but at some point we'll have to. And then therefore, in order to be an informed consumer or an informed citizen, it's just important to understand where things were, because it kind of gives you an indication of where things could go. Right now, even though it seems like we're taxed at such a high rate, historically speaking, we're really not.
Right. Good point.
So that's why it's important to address it now before it's too late.
I think that's a very good point, and that's some interesting historical facts you're bringing to bear there. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting to me too, how little people prepare for this kind of stuff. I mean, some people do. We're not trying to slander everybody here today, but it's a subject that, prevention is such a slow thing to sort of take hold in people's lives, because wherever they're at in their life, they probably feel good maybe about it, especially if they have some money, and they're like not particularly worried about it. And it's usually, like you said, people get started like way late, or that they figure they've got it handled, but they're going to end up paying big on the back end when the tax rate perhaps may be higher. Obviously you've encountered a lot of these people and horror stories and stuff over your 14-year career in this. Maybe some of the listeners would benefit from maybe a few stories of people who were able to reverse it, and sort of what ages they were at and so forth, and sort of what situation, you don't have to name names obviously, but some sort of situations that people were able to take themselves out of because of your expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So if we take the person A and person B example, I had this client come in the door about 5 years ago. And at the time he was 56 years old, and he wanted to retire in 8 or 9 years was his goal. So when he looked at what he had, and he looked at a projection of where he thought he could go, let's just say he had $500,000. I'm just making the numbers part of it up because it's kind of irrelevant what he actually had. But let's just say he had $500,000, and he wanted, or he thought he could get that 500 to become $1 million in 8 or 9 years. Okay. But the thing is that when he calculated, all right, if I stop working and I've got $1 million and I can get, let's just say 4% on my money or 5% on my money, well, then I've got to pay taxes on that. So let's just say it's 5%. My 5% on my million, my 50 actually gets taxed. And then my Social Security I get is also taxed. So he calculated for himself if he could even get 5%, which is a whole nother story. What he calculated when he came into my office was, I'm a millionaire, but I'm not going to be able to live even close to the way I want to live. I'm not going to be able to travel to see my kids when they have their own children, which they have, or which he thinks they're going to do now. At the time,
Right.
his kids were younger. But that was a hope. Every parent wants their kids to have kids, So he calculated out that he wouldn't be able to travel. He wouldn't be able to maintain a country club membership. He wouldn't be able to do the things that he wanted to do. And so, it's sad to see people come in who they're working hard, they're running businesses, whatever they're doing, and they're trying to do all the right things, but the system just has them set up to be set up wrong, We just basically switched things around. We made him person B. And as a result of that, he had much stronger cash flow. He's currently is set up to have much stronger cash flow and will have it throughout retirement. And he'll be able to, live the life that he wants to live. And that's the cool part about it is 5 years have passed. A lot of time has passed. He's happier now as a result of this. The worry's gone. And then when he does get into retirement, he'll be good. The reality is that you can get your money working more than once for you, doing multiple jobs for you. And when you do that, you can accomplish both of the things and all of the things, whether it be paying for your daughter's wedding, paying for college, buying cars, buying real estate, retiring. All those things can really be accomplished using the same buck. And we don't need to segment it into, I need this dollar for this, and I need this dollar for that. That's the wrong way to look at money. So that, that's a whole nother conversation just about efficiency. But did that kind of answer your question about?
Yeah, I think that's a very good answer. And man, the stuff you've shared with us here today have just been like outstanding. Just a real sort of fresh perspective. I think one that people need to hear and people need to consider, that it's not as scary perhaps as they first thought. And then there are people like you out there, Jeff, that are can make things quite simple and straightforward.
Yeah. It is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And we make it easy and we make it simple. But it certainly also doesn't have to be as scary. People listening, like, you don't have to be scared. You just have to, work with someone that does the right things and can validate it and prove it to you. That's also important. So, I'm glad that this, hopefully this shed some light for the listeners and viewers, for sure. So.
Absolutely. Now, if people want to get a hold of you personally, Jeff, where's the best place to go? How do they get in touch or get involved with you?
Yeah, so they could just go right to my website. It's www.imaginewealthcoaching.com/apply. And I would suggest going there, watching the video that I've got up. It'll give you some great information. We'll expand even further on the things that we talked about today. And do that. Go there now, check it out. Check it out now, and then go to the apply page and apply and book a call. I mean, we're here. There's only so many hours in a day, and the schedule does get filled up quickly. But go there. Go there now. Go to www.imaginewealthcoaching.com/apply and pick your time for a breakthrough call. And it'll be the best 45 minutes when you book that call. We'll get on. And it'll be the best 45 minutes you've spent talking and planning your retirement, talking about and planning your retirement. You have ever had and will ever had, frankly.
Awesome. Awesome. Great advice. I really want to thank you for coming on the show today. You've really give me food for thought. And I know the people listening to this will be perhaps reconsidering the trepidation and so forth with getting involved with getting a head start, and for the younger people to get on it now so that you can take advantage of that compound interest curve.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show, man. It's been a real pleasure.
Listen, it's been my pleasure. It was really great speaking with you. And, to all the listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. And I hope everyone has a safe and healthy and blessed day. Thank you.
Awesome. And for everybody else, of course, hopefully we'll be back again with somebody next week who's as knowledgeable and thoughtful and informative as our friend Jeff here